Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today, we're going to be tackling a topic that I think a lot of people have been hearing about. It's been generating a lot of buzz lately, and that is universal basic income, or as most people know it, UBI. So whether you're someone who is maybe prepping for a big presentation on the future of work, or just someone who's curious about all the crazy ways tech might reshape our world, this deep dive is for you. We are going to be dissecting a video excerpt that explores the history and the potential implications of UBI, especially in light of all the advancements happening with the fourth industrial revolution.
Yeah, it's so fascinating to me to discover that UBI isn't just some new idea that got cooked up in Silicon Valley. The concept actually has roots going way back, centuries. And you know what might surprise you to know? The early discussions about UBI weren't actually about supporting people like financially, but were about a way to curb crime.
Wow, okay, that's a
Yeah.
curveball I was not expecting. Crime and UBI, that's a connection I'm really curious to unpack.
Yeah, think about it. Back in the day, punishments for theft were really brutal. I mean, we're talking mutilation, even death. And so some philosophers saw this as barbaric, and
Right.
they started brainstorming some alternatives. And their solution was to provide a basic income to ensure that everybody
Yeah.
had enough to survive so that
Yeah.
they would be less likely to steal out of desperation.
Wow, so it was less about social safety nets and more about maintaining order. It's like they were tackling the root cause of crime by addressing poverty head on. It really makes you wonder if that same approach could be applied to some of our modern day issues with wealth inequality.
Absolutely. I mean, it's widely recognized that, relative poverty,
Yeah.
which is the gap between the haves and the have-nots, is a much stronger driver of crime than absolute poverty.
Well, so the bigger the wealth gap, the more crime you're likely to see. That definitely resonates with a lot of conversations happening today. But let's fast forward a bit. How did these industrial revolutions impact the discussion around UBI?
Well, the first industrial revolution, it started in the 18th century, really threw a wrench in the gears. Suddenly you had machines that were replacing manual labor, and fears of mass unemployment started swirling.
Oh, I bet people were freaking out, thinking those darn machines are taking our jobs.
Absolutely. But here's the twist. The first, and even the second and third industrial revolutions ultimately ended up creating more jobs than they destroyed. People adapted their skills to work with the new machines. It wasn't always smooth sailing, but the transitions were manageable.
So the need for UBI kind of faded into the background. As people found new ways to earn a living, each revolution brought its own technological disruptions, but somehow the workforce adapted. But now we're in the midst of this fourth industrial revolution, and things feel a little different this time around, right?
Exactly. This time around, we're not just talking about machines that are replacing muscles, but we're talking about artificial intelligence, potentially replacing minds, AI, robotics, even gene editing. These advancements have the power to completely remove humans from certain jobs.
It's also
Yeah.
something out of a sci-fi movie. I remember our source even referencing the World Economic Forum predicting a future with a robot workforce.
Yeah.
Kind of makes you wonder if they're secretly plotting a robot uprising.
Well, let's not jump to conclusions just yet. While there's understandable anxiety about robots taking over, it's crucial to remember that past revolutions have shown us that humans are remarkably adaptable.
That's true, but this time it's not just about learning to operate a new machine. It's about competing with machines that can think, that can learn, and possibly outperform us in many, many tasks. That's a whole new ballgame.
Precisely. And that brings us to a critical question. Will everyone have the intellectual capacity to adapt to these increasingly complex jobs of the future?
Okay, I see where you're going with this. It's not just about the availability of jobs, but it's about whether people are even equipped to fill them. And if AI and automation gobble up all the less complex jobs, what happens to those who can't make the leap to these new, more demanding roles?
Well, our source uses a very stark example. The U.S. military, they have an IQ requirement of 85 for enlistment. Anyone scoring lower is deemed unfit for even the most basic tasks. Now imagine applying that criteria to the civilian workforce in an age of AI.
That's a pretty sobering thought. If we're facing a future where millions of jobs are potentially on the chopping block, and not everyone can snag these new high-skill roles.
UBI starts to sound less like a fringe idea and more like a necessary safety net, doesn't it?
That's certainly the argument many proponents are making. But then we bump into the next hurdle. How on earth do we fund something as massive as UBI?
Yeah, let's talk about the elephant in the room. The cost. I remember Andrew Yang's 2020 presidential campaign, where he proposed giving $1,000 a month. He called it a freedom dividend for every American adult. Sounds amazing on paper, right? But the price tag was astronomical, over $3 trillion annually. How could we possibly foot that bill? That's the trillion-dollar question, literally. Okay, well, let's delve into some potential funding models, each with its own set of benefits and drawbacks. One idea that's been floating around is taxing the colossal cash reserves that are held by big tech companies.
Ooh, tapping into the treasure chests of Silicon Valley. I like the way you think. But is that even remotely feasible?
Well, while it's tempting to imagine those massive reserves bankrolling UBI indefinitely, the reality is they probably wouldn't even be enough. Plus, it raises concerns about government overreach and potentially stifling innovation, which is the very thing we're trying to harness.
Okay, so raiding big tech's coffers
Mm-hmm.
might not be the silver bullet solution. What other options are on the table?
Another fascinating, albeit slightly sci-fi concept, is a community-owned or state-owned AI that generates profits, which are then shared with everyone. Picture an AI that's trading stocks, developing cutting-edge technologies, even creating art, all with the proceeds funding UBI.
Whoa, now that's thinking outside the box.
Okay.
It's like this utopian dream where AI becomes the ultimate benefactor of humanity. But I can also see how this could go terribly wrong.
You're right, there are inherent risks. Ensuring that such an AI is ethically developed and managed, and that the profits are distributed fairly, those are monumental challenges. It's a concept with a lot of unknowns.
Definitely a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
Any other ideas for funding this massive undertaking?
Well, we can look to real-world examples, like sovereign wealth funds, which countries like Norway have successfully implemented. These funds amass wealth that's generated from state-owned enterprises, and they invest it long-term, using the returns to support their citizens.
So basically, the government becomes a giant investment fund, leveraging its profits to benefit the people. That's intriguing, especially if we're talking about harnessing the power of AI to drive economic growth.
Exactly. It demonstrates that large-scale, government-led initiatives to support citizens are definitely possible. However, the success of these models hinges heavily on responsible management and political stability.
Yeah, this deep dive is revealing just how complex the UBI debate really is. Even if we crack the funding code, there's a whole other layer of potential pitfalls and unintended consequences to grapple with.
You're absolutely right. Even with the best intentions, implementing UBI could have ripple effects that we might not anticipate. We need to be prepared to address those challenges head on.
Okay, I'm definitely getting a sense that this is just the tip of the iceberg. We've covered the historical context of UBI, the impact of various industrial revolutions, and we even dipped our toes into potential funding models. But I have a feeling this deep dive is about to get even more interesting. Are you ready to explore the potential downsides of UBI?
Let's dive in. It's crucial to understand both the potential benefits and the potential risks before we can form a truly informed opinion.
Welcome back to our deep dive into universal basic income. Before the break, we were discussing some pretty out there ideas for funding UBI, including a state-owned AI generating profits.
Yeah, almost like something out of a sci-fi movie, right? Totally. And speaking of sci-fi, I'm still processing this whole concept of genetic engineering as a potential solution to job displacement. It feels like we're wading into some seriously deep philosophical waters here.
Yeah, it definitely raises a lot of eyebrows. Our source even points out that, the anxiety surrounding genetic engineering is comparable to that fear of AI taking over all of our jobs. They both tap into this primal fear of humans becoming obsolete.
Yeah, and it's like we're grappling with the very definition of what it means to be human in an age where technology is advancing at warp speed.
On the one hand, boosting everyone's intelligence. Sounds like a recipe for a utopian society,
Yeah.
where everyone can contribute at a higher level. But on the other hand,
There's that nagging question of at what cost? Who gets to decide what level of intelligence is desirable or necessary? And what happens to those who choose not to be enhanced? Do we risk creating a new caste system based on genetic potential? These are some really crucial questions to consider before we even start tinkering with our DNA.
it's almost like we're at this crossroads in human evolution. And we have to choose between embracing technology to transcend our limitations or risk being consumed by it. Enhancing intelligence. Well, that solved the problem of job displacement. But what about the unintended consequences? Think about the potential for unforeseen mutations or long-term health effects we're talking about messing with, the very building blocks of life.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important to approach these advancements with caution, with ethical awareness. and with a deep understanding of the potential consequences. It's not about picking sides in some grand technological battle. It's about recognizing the complexities and engaging in nuanced discussions. Both AI and genetic engineering have the potential for immense good, but they also carry significant risks.
Yeah, it's like walking a tightrope. We need to balance the excitement of innovation with the responsibility of ensuring that these technologies are used for the betterment of humanity. Blindly embracing new tech without considering its impact on individuals and society as a whole is a recipe for disaster. I think that's a really important point for our listeners to take away.
Couldn't agree more. And that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating. We're not just exploring the mechanics of UBI, but we're wrestling with these fundamental questions about the nature of work, the role of technology, and ultimately, the future of humanity.
It's a lot to process, but it's also incredibly thought-provoking. I'm starting to see how UBI is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. It's not a solution in itself,
Yeah.
but a potential response to the anxieties we have about this rapidly changing world.
Exactly. UBI is a symptom of a much deeper societal shift, reflecting our concerns about automation, economic inequality, and the uncertainties surrounding the future of work.
So if UBI isn't the be-all and end-all solution, what are some alternative approaches to tackling these challenges?
Well, there's a growing movement that's advocating for a more holistic approach. That goes beyond simply providing a basic income. Imagine investing in education and training to equip people with the skills they need to thrive in the evolving job market, or fostering entrepreneurship and innovation, empowering people to create their own opportunities instead of relying on these traditional employment models.
So instead of just handing out checks, we're talking about empowering people to become active participants in the new economy.
Yeah.
I like the sound of that. But how do we actually put these solutions into action? It seems like such a monumental task, given the scale of the challenges that we're facing.
It's definitely a complex undertaking, but I think it all starts with a shift in mindset. We need to ditch this us versus them mentality that pits humans against machines and embrace a more collaborative and inclusive approach.
So instead of fearing the robots,
Yeah.
we should be figuring out how to work alongside them. I'm all for turning potential rivals into teammates.
Exactly. It's about acknowledging the potential for disruption while also recognizing the incredible opportunity to harness technology for good. We can leverage the strengths of both humans and machines to create a future that benefits everyone.
That's definitely a more optimistic perspective. But even with the best education and training programs, what happens to those who just can't keep up with the breakneck pace of technological change? Are they destined to fall through the cracks?
That's a valid concern, and it's where the conversation gets even more complex. Our source suggests that even in a best-case scenario, there might be a segment of the population who struggle to adapt to the demands of a highly automated, tech-driven workforce, no matter how much support they receive.
So are we back to square one? Needing UBI as a safety net after all?
It's certainly a possibility, but we have to be mindful of those potential pitfalls that we discussed earlier. Remember, even with good intentions, UBI could exacerbate wealth inequality, disincentivize work, and fuel inflation. It's not a simple fix.
It feels like we're navigating uncharted territory here, trying to find our way through a maze of complex issues with no easy answers.
That's a great analogy. The future of work is a maze, and there's no single path to success. We need to be open to exploring different approaches, experimenting with new ideas, and constantly adapting to the ever-changing landscape.
So what's the next step in this journey? Where do we go from here?
Well, I think the most important thing we can do is to foster open and informed dialogue. We need to engage with a wide range of perspectives, challenge our assumptions, and think critically about the implications of different solutions.
That sounds like a call to action for our listeners. What can they do to contribute to this conversation?
Well, they can start by learning about the potential impacts of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, exploring different perspectives on UBI and alternative solutions, and engaging in discussions within their communities, with policymakers, even with their employers.
So it's about becoming informed citizens, actively participating in shaping the future of work, and ensuring that technology serves humanity rather than the other way around.
Exactly. It's about reclaiming our agency in a world that often feels increasingly complex and beyond our control.
Yeah, I'm definitely feeling more empowered to engage in these conversations and advocate for solutions that benefit everyone. But before we wrap up this part of the deep dive, I have one more question that's been bugging me. We've talked a lot about the potential for AI and automation to displace human workers. But what about the flip side? Could these technologies actually create new jobs?
That's a fantastic question, and one that often gets lost. In all the doom and gloom predictions of a robot takeover, history has repeatedly shown us that technological advancements, while disruptive, also tend to spawn entirely new industries and job opportunities that we couldn't have even envisioned before.
So instead of just focusing on the jobs we might lose, we should also be on the lookout for the doors that technology is opening.
Precisely. The fourth industrial revolution isn't solely about replacing humans. It's also about augmenting our capabilities and creating new possibilities. Imagine humans and machines working together, each playing to their strengths to achieve greater
Now
outcomes.
that's a future I can get behind,
Yeah.
but it's hard to envision what these new jobs might look like. How do we even begin to predict what we don't yet know?
It's certainly a challenge, but we can look for clues in the trends that are already emerging. Take, for example, the rapid growth of the AI industry itself. It's creating this huge demand for data scientists, AI engineers, and even ethicists who can ensure that these technologies are developed and deployed responsibly.
So the rise of AI is actually fueling job creation within the field of AI. That's kind of a mind-bending concept, isn't it?
It is, and it highlights the dynamic and ever-evolving nature of technological innovation. As AI becomes more sophisticated, we're likely to see new applications popping up in healthcare, education, transportation, entertainment, you name it. And this will inevitably lead to new job roles that we can't even fathom right now.
It's both exciting and a little daunting. To think about all the possibilities, it definitely underscores the importance of
Adaptability and lifelong learning. We need to be prepared to constantly upgrade our skills and embrace new challenges as the job market continues to transform.
absolutely. The ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn will be essential for navigating the future of work. Specializing in a single field is no longer enough. We need to be versatile, adaptable, and always hungry for new knowledge and experiences.
That's a powerful message to leave our listeners with. The future of work may be uncertain, but it's also brimming with potential. By embracing a mindset of lifelong learning, adaptability, and collaboration, we can navigate the challenges and seize the opportunities that lie ahead.
Well said. And remember, the future isn't some predetermined destiny. It's something that we actively create through the choices that we make today. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been exploring some pretty mind-blowing concepts, from the history of UBI to the potential for AI to reshape the very fabric of our workforce. It's clear we're in the midst of this massive technological shift, and that the future of work is anything but certain.
Absolutely. It's like we're standing on the edge of a new frontier with both exhilarating possibilities and some pretty daunting unknowns stretching out before us.
Yeah, one of the things that's really stuck with me is this whole idea that instead of fearing this robot takeover, we should be focusing on how to collaborate with these advancements, turning potential rivals into powerful allies.
That's a crucial mindset shift. The fourth industrial revolution isn't just about machines replacing humans, it's about humans and machines working together, each leveraging their unique strengths to achieve outcomes that neither could accomplish alone.
Yeah, it's almost like a dance, learning to move in sync with technology to create something truly remarkable. But before we get carried away with these visions of a harmonious human-robot waltz, I have to circle back to a topic that's been swirling in my mind since we first touched on it: genetic engineering.
Ah, yes, the concept that sparked quite a bit of debate. I think it's safe to say that genetic engineering is one of the most ethically charged aspects of this entire discussion.
It definitely pushes a lot of buttons.
Yeah.
On the one hand, the idea of enhancing human intelligence to keep pace with technology is incredibly intriguing. But on the other hand, it opens up this Pandora's box of ethical dilemmas.
Our source material definitely doesn't shy away from those anxieties. It even compared the fear of genetic manipulation to those dystopian visions of a world dominated by AI. It begs the question, what if the fourth industrial revolution isn't about robots replacing us, but about humans modifying themselves to outcompete both machines and each other?
Okay, that's a pretty chilling thought. It's like evolution on fast forward, with humans taking control over the very essence of what it means to be human. Who gets to decide what enhancements are desirable or even acceptable? And what happens to those who choose not to or can't afford to participate in this genetic arms race?
You've hit on some of the most critical ethical considerations. The potential for genetic engineering to create new forms of inequality and social division is a very real concern. It's imperative that we have these difficult conversations now before these technologies become widely available to ensure they're used responsibly and ethically.
Well, this deep dive has been an incredible journey full of mind-bending concepts and thought-provoking discussions. We've covered a lot of ground, from the historical roots of UBI to the potential for AI to both disrupt and create new jobs. And we've explored some seriously complex ethical dilemmas along the way.
It's been quite the intellectual roller coaster, but if there's one key takeaway I hope our listeners walk away with, it's this. The future is not preordained. It's something we actively create through the choices we make today.
Yeah, it's about taking ownership of the future, not just passively waiting to see what happens. And that starts with engaging in informed discussions, challenging assumptions, and advocating for solutions that align with our values.
Exactly. We need to be proactive, not reactive. Whether it's investing in education and training to equip people with the skills of the future, fostering innovation and entrepreneurship, or ensuring that technological advancements are guided by ethical principles, we all have a role to play in shaping a future that benefits all of humanity.
This deep dive has left me feeling both energized and a bit overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. It's clear there are no easy answers, but one thing's for sure, the future of work is a topic we can't afford to ignore.
I couldn't agree more. It's a conversation that needs to happen at all levels of society, from kitchen tables to boardrooms to government halls, and it's a conversation that needs to happen now.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought-provoking question inspired by our source material. Imagine a world where genetic enhancement becomes commonplace. Would you choose to enhance your intelligence to stay competitive in the job market? And what might be the ripple effects of such a choice, not just for you as an individual, but for society as a whole? It's a question that will likely spark debate and introspection long after this episode ends. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating and ever-evolving world of work.